Constructive Voices, the podcast for the construction people, with news, views, and expert interviews.
Hi, I'm Steve Randall, and welcome to another of our special podcast episodes featuring the many people that Peter Finn, Pete the Builder, and I spoke to at the Footprint Plus event at the start of June. We learned a lot and discovered some fascinating work that's going on to ensure that the construction industry is part of the greener, more sustainable world that we need as we drive towards carbon net zero. If you can't wait to catch up with all our guests from Footprint Plus, have a listen to our online radio stream where you can hear them all. Just visit constructive-voices.com, don't forget the dash, or ask Alexa to launch Constructive Voices. However you listen, with Constructive Voices, the conversation is building.
Constructive Voices media partner in Ireland and the United Kingdom is Construction Industry News. Since 2002, Construction Industry News has been focused on the very latest projects and developments within the UK and Ireland.
I'm Stuart McLaren. I'm the Net Zero Director for Infrastructure for S&C Lavalin, and originally part of the Atkins Group, which is now part of the family of S&C Lavalin. I'm also the Decarbonomics Development Director, which is looking at decarbonising existing buildings at the estate level, at the enterprise level. And I guess my main focus is looking at innovation and incubation of new solutions to address the climate change challenge around decarbonising the built environment, major infrastructure, including buildings, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, excellent stuff. And an event like Footprint Plus is certainly a big melting pot of a lot of very similar-minded people. And it's quite busy here today, which is great to see. And is there anything that you've taken out of being involved in the event, and anything that you think is very positive about being involved in events like this?
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. We're only 3 years in from net zero being legislated in the UK, and it's great to see these events now that are focused solely on the topic of how we actually achieve net zero, particularly around buildings, which makes up around 40% of sort of global emissions. And particularly in the UK, where 84% of the population live in urbanised areas. So this really is such a topical issue for us to be discussing. And so just the fact that we are congregated, having these discussions with the whole value chain that is involved in trying to solve this issue, is just a really strong signal of sort of the commitment and interest and intent of industry to really turn up and put their heads together. And this to me is about learning and sharing our insights, because we are still new, we're still finding our way forward, and the more we come together and share the lessons learned about what good looks like or what bad looks like, the more chance we have of actually succeeding at this monumental challenge.
Very good, very good. And I know you're very experienced in this topic. It's not something that you've just got involved in recently. You've got a vast experience in it. And there was a recent New York Times article that said the UK and I think it was one other country are one of the only two countries in the world that are on target to meet the targets that have been set, which is very positive to hear. And is there something that you think that we can do to improve on that? Is there any element of what you do in your aspect of your work that you would really like to push at this moment in time?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It depends who you read. So if you look at the Committee on Climate Change's budget reports, actually we're massively behind where we need to be, and we're falling way short of what's needed. So, what I'd say we've been particularly good at is making the commitment, is legislating, which is something only a handful of other countries have actually done, is actually move it into legislation and create a burning platform. The issue is the lack of teeth and the lack of policy and regulation to support the legislation, and it's still confused, and the industry is still trying to find its feet and understand exactly what the best path forward is. That doesn't mean we should wait. Actually, we just need to get going. We can't wait for perfection, we've just got to get started. But equally, we also do need to hatch a plan as we go and ultimately end up in a very coordinated, very focused place. So I think there's still a significant amount of work to do, and this is, again, I come back to the point of us as an industry, we learn and we share what we're doing, how we're doing it, because fundamentally every aspect of how we deliver these types of outcomes, it can't rely on our established ways of doing things, whether it's technical delivery, project delivery, commercial innovation, all these things need to be looked at as we try and address how we deliver these large, particularly here today, the large part of the topic's on retrofit. If you've got a big estate, if you own hundreds, if not thousands of buildings, this is years, if not decades of work, which will, in some instances, be quite hard to justify on cost grounds. So there's a lot we can do, and today is just a great example of seeing what we are doing. And I'm taking away, to be honest, great inspiration that there's a lot of people who are all heading in the right direction, and hopefully we will be converging very soon.
Excellent stuff. Just last question then, Stuart. I kind of like to put it in simple terms. I like to say that maybe the talking stage of sustainability is over and we're now in the action phase. Is it fair to say that there needs to be more push from government level, there needs to be more drive to make sure that the action gets the reaction that we need, which is exactly like what you just said there, huge estates. In concept, that sounds good, but in reality, that's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of logistics to get those things done correctly. So, I suppose, what would you like to see, or what's your last word, I suppose, on how do we make that step? How do we get that push to really encourage people to come on board and to make the difference?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the level of commitment is clear and it's growing all the time, but I would say that if I was to characterise where we are as a wider economy, it's still very much rooted in understanding the nature of the challenge, planning and maybe road mapping. There's not that much in terms of at-scale delivery. Like, stuff is happening, there's some good stuff out there, there's some great examples of things, but it's all fairly small scale in comparison to what's actually got to be done. And I would say we are approaching this transition in parts of our economy and in different sectors that are maybe more advanced than others, but actually turning commitment into a plan into action is still broadly where we are, and it's that issue of not waiting for perfection again, and actually getting industry to be mature enough to be able to stand up to the challenge is kind of where we're at now. And Brexit, cost of living crisis, geopolitical instability and wars and so on, all these massive shocks macroeconomically just continue to sort of really test the resolve of our ability to make the case and actually keep driving forward. And so, these are turbulent waters we're traversing at the minute. But again, you see how everyone's turning up today, client organisations as much as the value chain. And again, it's really encouraging. It's a really encouraging space.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much for your time, Stuart. Hope you can relax now and enjoy the event at Do Plenty Networking. Thank you very much.
From the Footprint Plus event in Brighton, UK, to the global construction industry.
This is Constructive Voices.
My name is Ziad Asmar. I'm a structural engineer at Pinnacle Consulting Engineers. We focus on a wide range of different types of buildings. We do a lot of commercial buildings, retail, and we do some residential buildings as well. Now I can go into depth in terms of what types of commercial buildings we do. We are mainly focused on data centers, which are a very big industry at the moment. We do work with very high-end clients like Microsoft, Google, Amazon. We are building all around the UK and even outside of the UK in Europe, in some parts of Europe. We have one of our offices in Germany at the moment, and it's going very well and very interesting times ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned some of those big name clients, and I imagine clients of all sizes, but particularly those big ones that are in stark global focus. Everybody wants to know how they're achieving their ESG criteria, and are they doing things correctly. So, I mean, sustainability must be at the heart of everything you do now.
Of course it is, and we are being pushed more and more by clients to minimize the amount of steel and the amount of carbon we are emitting. And we are looking at different alternatives, like, for example, importing low-carbon steel from Europe. We're studying that, the cost implications, obviously, and the amount of carbon that's being emitted in terms of kilogram of carbon dioxide. And one of the speakers was talking about how we need to optimize and maximize the utilization ratios of our structure, which minimizes the sizes of the beams, of the columns, to reduce the carbon emissions. Because obviously the less steel we're using, the less amount of carbon dioxide we're going to emit. And also another point, and a very important point, is the geometry of the building. We always focus on that. We take into account, we study what our best geometry we can tackle to keep obviously the client happy and the architect happy, and integrate that with the M&E equipment to come up with a reasonable solution. We always try to avoid transfer structures, because transfer structures are usually higher in cost in terms of higher emissions of CO2, but sometimes they're inevitable. Such as sometimes you do need clear spans, especially in the data centers where you have the racks. But there are always ways around it, and we do our best to, accommodate and satisfy everybody.
Now, you've mentioned cost a couple of times, and that's always a big one. And, whether it's the smaller clients or whether it's a huge global client, cost is the one that they're going to ask about. How sort of flexible, when you're having that conversation and you're saying, well, we'd rather use less steel, we'd rather use this, it may be a little bit more expensive, but how do those conversations go, and how receptive are these companies to that?
At the moment, to be honest with you, they are more and more receptive because of the move of reducing the carbon. However, once it isn't in the regulations and it isn't forced yet, once it is forced and it is set by the regulators, I think that's when we're going to see an exponential change. At the moment, cost is a big factor, yes. We do have other factors, which are the other variables, which is the carbon emissions. And we do need to look at both equally, if not, if we want to meet the 2030 and the 2050 net zero carbon emissions. So it is a very hot topic. We are doing our best as an industry, as designers, and we come up with different solutions and propose them to clients. Obviously, the cost is a very big factor, but once, I think, in my personal opinion, once it is forced and regulated, that's when we're going to see real change. That's where we're going to squeeze our designs to the maximum.
Fantastic. And from the conversations that you've had here with people at Footprint Plus, and there have been a lot of people through here over the last few days, what are people saying to you? What's the sort of feedback you're getting from them, or what are you learning from them as well? Because it's very much a 360 thing, this. It is.
There's a lot to learn. There is a lot to grasp as well. I'm not going to go into detail one by one, but I've been to a couple of events, very interesting events. I was just in the historic England. They were talking about the circular economy and how we can, repurpose, reuse the old heritage buildings and what value they create. Because in old heritage building, they usually have character, they have an architectural aspect to it, which builds a lot of value. And usually that is the preference, to go to, an old building rather than starting a brand new building, because that would reduce the carbon emissions massively. So it's the way that it's going forward, but obviously that depends on what the clients need, what the purpose of the building is going to be, and there are a lot of topics and studying that is going on at the moment.
That's why this event is so great, isn't it? Because there are so many people talking about so many different things, and once you sort of piece them together and see how it fits into your world, you can see how the solutions are going to be possible.
Exactly, yes, I agree 100%, and it's a very good place to network as well and understand different companies and what they do and how they're contributing to all this low carbon emission goal.
Absolutely. And where can people find out more about you?
They can go visit our website. We are on social media. everywhere on social media, so Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. It's my business card over here. I can hand it over to you. But yeah, we are Pinnacle Consulting Engineers. We are all around the UK. We have offices in Norwich, in London, Welwyn Garden City, and recently in Germany, and also in Ireland. So we're a strong team. We do mostly structures and civils, and yeah, exciting times ahead.
Lovely. Well, thanks very much for spending some time talking to us, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you. You too.
This is Constructive Voices.
I'm Nick Hillard. I've just recently joined Thai Construction and Vision Modular as their ESG lead. So looking after the environmental, social and governance aspects of the delivery of 3D modular designs.
Excellent stuff. And I heard your talk there. Very interesting stuff. To be able to carry out modular construction on such a large scale is very impressive stuff. We do believe that modular is the future going forward. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, we work in modular and traditional construction, but primarily focus around modular design. So we were here launching a research paper that we've just undertaken, looking at two of our buildings that went up in 2020. The world's tallest modular building at George Street in Croydon, and a student accommodation building in Gants Hill in London. So yeah, it's exciting times for modular design. I think there's a real impetus behind it, for the benefits that we can discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think the timing of modular construction coming to the fore with the sustainability issue going forward, with the ability to be able to record your carbon footprint correctly when you're doing it in a modular way, but to be able to take modular construction and do it in such a large scale, like the projects that you've just discussed there are, it really does take modular construction to a new level in my mindset. Is it fair to say that? And develop a little bit further about exactly what you did do with these projects.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we build buildings of various heights. As I say, the world's tallest building in Croydon, the modular building, and all the way through to build to rent, but primarily focused around residential housing. And we see the sustainability credentials of the building, but alongside this dire need for more housing, and we're certainly operating in that space to try and blend those two together. So the piece of work we've just launched is independent academic research around the embodied carbon in the building itself, or the two buildings. So we found something in the region of 45% saving against a traditional reinforced concrete method of construction, which beat benchmark figures from Letty and from Reba already. The business as usual by about 50% already, and we're ahead of a 2030 benchmark for one of those buildings. So this is real groundbreaking research on existing buildings rather than in design.
Yeah, I think that's the difference about this conversation, is that it's happened and it's happening, and I'm delighted to hear that, because when it comes to sustainability and it comes to carbon net zero, a lot of the discussion is discussion. You do hear of some projects that have got there, but to hear that you've completed these projects, have more projects on the way, and are doing it in such a sustainable way, it really does give hope, and it's great to hear that you're ahead of your targets, because I think that's the problem with targets. Sometimes you can be ahead, sometimes you can be behind, and maybe some areas can be ahead and behind. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, and sort of how modular construction and what you do can help reach those targets?
Yeah, indeed. There's a lot of walking the walk now and talking the talk. So we wanted to instruct this piece of work to actually, we knew that we thought there was a benefit in terms of embodied carbon to the buildings that we're putting up, and this independent research has actually demonstrated that, which is great news. We know that modular design assists in terms of nuisance on site, numbers of people on site. We know it's a quality construction on the basis of factory designed modules, etc., and factory controlled in a quality environment. So we know those additional benefits are there. This piece of work was specifically around the embodied carbon, and there's other research that we're undertaking in terms of what you alluded to there in terms of post-occupancy evaluation. How are those buildings performing against the design design target of A-rated EPC. You know, are we fulfilling that role in operation? And there's a whole piece of work there. You know, what are our occupants of those ultimate developments experiencing in terms of the buildings themselves? So tying in the social side as well as the environmental benefits. And then certainly from the governance side, in terms of certifications and standards, etc., these things are leading the way, and the variability in terms of design, and these are real showpiece architectural buildings.
Excellent stuff. And also, I suppose when we talk about modular construction, sometimes people just think about it as residential, but like it's not just residential. Like it can be, like in China there was hospitals built very quickly. That was something that at the start of the pandemic it kind of went viral and everybody got to see it. And of course the question was, why aren't we doing that? And the answer was, we are actually doing it, but people aren't really buying into it, I suppose is the best way to put it. And there's so many other issues that can be quickly resolved by going down the modular route. Is that fair to say, or is that, am I maybe exaggerating when I say those things?
I think it might have been to the detriment of the modular sector that everything's been grouped together. We focus around high-rise, especially residential, built-to-rent, and hotels and student accommodation. But other modular designs will fulfil other needs, and ultimately, if they are requiring tight timescales, etc., tight sites, constrained sites, then it is the answer to some of the issues in the sector.
Great stuff. So final question. Thanks very much for your time. So we are all on this path to try and do good, try and help our planet get to carbon net zero. In your opinion, are we going there fast enough? And are we going to get there on time? We
were leading the way, and I think there is an appetite to continue to do that. We have got to maintain our leadership position across the globe in terms of driving this agenda, because it is, as you say, one planet living.
Constructive Voices.
Live at Footprint Plus.
So my name's Josie Cadwallader-Hughes, and I'm the Sustainability Director at FACUM.
Tell me more about what you do, and particularly about these zero-carbon homes.
Yeah, so we're committed to building zero-carbon communities. We committed to 3 zero-carbon commitments that are called Net Zero by 2025. Now, the first one of that is that the homes that we will deliver from the 1st of January in 2025 will be zero carbon. None of this tricky transition period. We want to make it really clear to our customers that if we're giving you a set of keys from that date, that home will be zero carbon. So to do that, there's always this huge lag with planning applications, how long it takes to design and then build and then hand over a house. That means that we've been planning for zero carbon for quite a long time already. And we've just built our first zero carbon homes for Waverley Borough Council as a contractor, because they declared that they had a climate change emergency back in 2019, and this is their first example of them showing that they are walking the talk as well. So we built that out for them. There's about 23 homes. They're all zero carbon. Now, the tricky thing is because we planned this so long ago, they still have gas boilers in, which is a fossil fuel, but technically it's still a zero carbon house. So the next versions of that obviously will be moving towards air source heat pumps. It's an evolution, and it's about changing with technology and changing with how government decide what zero carbon is.
So give us an idea of, obviously there are going to be a lot of things that go into making this zero carbon, but give us some of the big ones, some of the big factors that maybe those listening will be thinking, oh, okay, so that's how they did that bit.
Now, it's actually really simple. The first thing that you've got to do is reduce your energy demand, your need for energy, because then producing it from solar panels, it gets a lot easier because you don't need as many of them when you've only got a certain amount of roof space. So when it comes down to the fabric of a wall in a house, really, construction of a home hasn't really changed for about 200 years. It's very, very similar to how it's always been. What you need to do is invest in that, because it's not going to go obsolete, it doesn't require maintenance, and it doesn't need a manual as thick as War and Peace to be able to understand how to use it. Now, that is an upfront investment, and it does take space and it does take time to understand how that works. Now, that kind of leads on to that second point, is that net zero by 2025, our campaign towards that, the first one is around the operational use of a home and making sure that that is a zero carbon home. The second one is that it's carbon neutral in production, which means the materials that we use, we know how much carbon went into producing that, and we reduce it down and then we offset it. So we're in this careful balance of, we know that the best way to make a home zero carbon, the first thing you need to do is make the walls more efficient so you need less energy, but also we're the only house builder out there that's juggling that with understanding, making sure that we're not causing the next big carbon problem, that actually the homes that we build are more efficient in operational use and the walls are have lower embodied carbon. So very, very complex, but the first thing you've got to do is reduce energy demand, but you've got to do it in the right way, and that's what we're trying to do.
I mean, it is very exciting, and with the sort of the evolution, as you said, the next step, moving away from the gas boilers, how's that going to make things even better in terms of your process?
So the real big trouble for developers is the amount of electricity that is available in the local area when you go to design a development. So it might be, if you're going to put in a development of 1,000 homes, just a notional site somewhere, the things you've got to look at is, in terms of the electricity use that you've got on, so I've just been on stage with Phil Steele, who is a technology evangelist for Octopus Energy. Now, they've got some amazing tariffs and amazing products that help solve this problem, but the problem is that what the local DNO, the district network operator, the people that run the local grid expect is that for these 1,000 notional homes that we're building, that everyone's going to turn their kettle on at the same time, that everyone's air source heat pump is going to flick on at the same time, and also they've just driven home and they've just plugged their car in, which is another 7 kilowatts per house. This huge spike of energy that the local grid can't cope with, because it's not, let's say this 1,000 homes is right here in Brighton, they can't assume that all at once Rampion wind turbines are behind us in the distance, and it's not going to suddenly get windy and cope with all of this demand. So they take this massive spike as the worst possible scenario, and we have to deal with that. So what that means is that developers pay millions and millions of pounds into upgrading that local grid to be able to get all of the electricity they need for that worst case scenario. So in terms of the problems, the solutions that we need to be able to solve this crisis that's going to happen, in terms of we know what we want to design to make a low carbon, a low cost electric house, is actually that managing that peak demand. And like I said, Octopus are doing some great things, other energy companies are doing great things. It's how do we create an environment where when you move onto that development you accept that if everyone plugs their electric car in at once to charge, that actually it's going to make sure that you are fully charged by when you leave for work, but it might not be charging all at once. It's the same as over lockdown, all of the kids logged onto Peppa Pig all at once, right? And we didn't all get the same speed. I was sat at Teams going, I can't understand what my CEO's saying to me because it's just gone black on me, right? So it's the same sort of theory for electric. We need to have the technology, we need to have the solutions that deal with that complexity of everyone needing to use that electricity at different points in a day, basically.
Do you see a role for off-grid solutions for this at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rampion's in the background, turning away, and all of that stuff is necessary. We want to make sure that, to be honest, when you buy a house, it's a huge investment of a lot of money. There's this idea of the home is the castle, and what that means is that it's mine, it's on my roof, I understand how it works because it's there and I have the receipt. And that's great, except from if you go on holiday for a week, that energy could be used by your neighbour that's been produced by your solar panels. But that home is the castle kind of way of thinking. It's the same for water as well. If your water butt has captured all of your rainwater, but you're not around flushing the toilet, but someone next door is, that would be the best use of your local energy or your local water, is the stuff that's been generated on that site. So, we need to move away from that home as the castle idea. We need to be able to share and balance our local grid, whether it's water or electricity. Now, that's very complex, and there's not really the easy systems for developers to be able to install this, because there also needs to be that element of control. Who's going to maintain it? And who's going to maximise it? What sort of systems are going to be there to make sure that actually people have the choice that if they don't want to share, they don't have to. But some people might realise we need to make sure that there are systems and tariffs and whatever they are to for people to be able to financially realise the benefits of sharing that locally rather than moving to off-site.
And I guess people who have lived in leasehold properties, certainly in sort of apartments and flats that have a management company and they do a certain amount of things, they do have an idea now about how working together on certain things means a better community for all.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other speaker that was on this session earlier, Elida, she's from Socius, who absolutely invest in, they don't support developments with fossil fuel. So the people that move on to those sort of developments now they are urban developments. I think they've got one in Hove, and the people that move on to that development are committed to that. They tend to be more socially, environmentally aware and make decisions based on ethics. And that they do that. They're seeing more than enough customers come to them understanding that when they move on to that development, there are solar panels that are shared, and you don't have a space for a car, but you do have access to an electric car club. Now, that's part of the process of buying something from them, and it is that shared asset idea. Now, we build predominantly in West Sussex, in Surrey, in Hampshire, and the kind of home counties areas, and what we're trying to do is, we know that we don't need a few people doing sustainability perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Our homes don't look radically different, and they needn't look radically different from the other homes being built in West Sussex. It needs to fit in with the local vernacular, but it needs to do things that are fundamentally different within the fabric of the walls, within the technology that's in there, and within the facilities that are available in your radius. So, no longer should you have to get in a bus for an hour to go to the school, which is the case in some of West Sussex. Actually, we should be building developments that have got multiple schools on them, so that we're solving that transport carbon issue as well as affecting people's way of lives.
And the big one, of course, cost. I mean, to build the homes that you're building, is it a lot more? Is it cheaper? Is it about the same?
Obviously that it's more, yeah, of course it is. There's no hiding away from that. There are three factors in making sure that we build a house. Now, the first one is build cost, which if we're putting more materials in, there's going to be a bigger build cost. Now, there's stuff that we can do to that, and actually we've reduced the cost down by half from what we thought it was to build a zero carbon home 2 years ago. We've now halved that amount. And then the other thing is profits. There's a certain amount of profit margin that or survival that a housing association needs to have to keep going, same as a house builder like ourselves. That obviously needs to be in there as well. We can't reduce that too much more. So the final thing that can be affected is land value. And then basically what we do is we're never going to be the developer that goes to a land owner or an estate owner and says, we will offer you the most amount of money possible, because we know that affects our ability to deliver sustainable homes. So the landowners that we tend to work for are ones that are interested in legacy. They want to make sure that the homes are there, that after they've sold the land to us, are sustainable, that have exceptional quality, that have schools, shops, community assets, whether it's a community-owned shop or a community-owned cafe. They want to see that, and that's what's important. So that's the bit that can flex for us. That's how we make this business model work, is that we flex the land value to make sure that we can cope with the rise in build cost, that we can still make a profit, and that we can deliver exceptional homes.
And are you seeing more landowners being receptive to this, or actually actively kind of wanting this and wanting that sense of legacy?
We do, yeah. We certainly have enough to keep us busy, but we feel passionately that there should be more. That should be such a priority. And to be honest, we're not just looking for landowners or land agents that just have it out the goodwill of their hearts. Actually, the way that we put it to them is that it's a faster route to consent for them. This is a faster route because we know that we're building stuff that the local authority want, that the public want, and that our customers want. So for us, we don't just angle it towards, well, I'm afraid we won't be able to give you as much money as XY volume house builder, but we'll be able to do nice things. It's actually about, well, the stuff that we're going to build is beautiful, you'll be proud of it, and we'll be able to get there quicker.
Brilliant. Where can people find out more?
So you can find us at www.thacom.com. We're on Instagram, we're on all of the social medias, LinkedIn, all of the others. We're based in Billingshurst in West Sussex, so I'm really pleased to be able to come to an event that's actually local to me for once. But then, my name's Josie Cadwallader-Hughes, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
From the Footprint Plus event in Brighton, UK, to the global construction industry.
This is Constructive Voices.
Hi, I'm Paul Sullivan. I'm a chartered surveyor. Been working in the industry for about 22 years now. Work for a company called ISG. We're a global business. Turnover is in excess of 2 billion a year. We work in the fit-out team, and we're really focused on the environment and the climate at the minute. And myself and a colleague, Mike Lenahan, are setting up a new business within ISG, which is around decarbonising and retrofitting existing buildings. Our initial focus is going to be in London, but we're going to roll it out, hopefully through the UK over the coming years. So we felt like we should come to this event to really just gain a bit of knowledge and understanding. It's kind of, when you do your research online, it's a bit of a minefield. There's a lot of people in this space, but we felt like this was a real focused event and we could really get some benefit from it. We've been here for the 3 days. Obviously, been attending a lot of the talks. Found them really interesting. There's obviously a lot of people out here in this space now, and we're making a lot of connections here, which is really positive for us.
Yeah, great stuff. I've had the chance to listen to quite a lot of the talks myself as well, and the retrofit side of it is absolutely huge. Obviously, retrofitting an existing building massively reduces the embodied carbon, because you're not starting from scratch, you're not doing the demolition phase as well. So it's certainly something I think is coming to the fore now, and obviously your company is taking this very seriously, and it's probably a drive that you're going to push even further in the coming years.
Yeah, massively. I mean, what we see obviously with the upcoming changes in the MEES legislation and the requirement to get to all buildings to an EPC B by 2030, retrofitting is going to be a massive thing to decarbonise the UK stock. I think there's something like 1.6 million non-domestic buildings in the UK, and they contribute about 50% of the carbon emissions. So, definitely there's a lot of work to do in this space. I guess my biggest concern, and one thing we're worried about, is there's a lot of work, and obviously once the government mandates this and the work needs to be done out there by 2030, we're just concerned whether there's the trades to do it. We've estimated that there's probably a shortfall of about 130,000 tradesmen, and that's at a time when the industry is already suffering with a labour shortage, from the likes of people not coming into industry, from the school leavers through to Brexit and people leaving the industry and going back to their home countries. So, I think we've got a massive, uphill struggle to get this done, and that's, I guess, why we're ISG wanting to put ourselves at the forefront of this and make sure we've got an offering that, clients can come to and rely on. We have got a great supply chain, and we can utilise and rely on those to make sure we can deliver what we promise our clients.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's a very, very fair point. I don't think it's isolated in the UK. I think definitely I'm seeing it myself in Ireland, and we're seeing it globally as well. And I think there needs to be a push to get more people back into construction. But I think if a company like yourselves has the manpower and has the resources to cover the work that needs to be done, I think it's going to be a huge advantage, because I think, setting targets is a very good thing to do. It has to be done, and even supplying grants is a very good thing to do. But if you don't have the workforce to do it, it's kind of, not really going to work. So I suppose, is that your main focus, is to make sure that you're out there to give the resources to get these works completed? Yeah,
exactly. Our focus is to make sure we've got a complete turnkey offering for our clients, so that we can come in, we can assess their building, identify what the problems are, if it's healthy or unhealthy, come up with the scheme of interventions. Obviously, a lot of these buildings that we're going to be working in are going to be occupied, and our specialism is going in occupied spaces and making sure we understand how the occupants use the space, and we do the work sympathetically around them. So that's going to be critical for us. And then also, one of the key things for us isn't just to finish the job and just hand it over to the client and walk away. way, it's about monitoring it and making sure that the performance of the building that we've just completed, actually delivers, so that the goals we set right at the beginning to make this as efficient as it can be, when they're actually operating and using it, we want to, part of our offering is going to be to maintain and hold that client's hand all the way through their life with that building, and make sure that it's performing and delivering what we said it would.
Yeah, excellent stuff. So an all-round package basically being delivered, that's being done in a way that can be monitored, and the building owner can then show that they're doing their part as well. So I suppose final question, obviously there's the reason why you're here is because you're aware of the situation in terms of the challenge that we have ahead to meet the targets, to try and get as close as we can to carbon net zero. Do you think the industry is taking it seriously enough at the moment? Do you think there needs to be a stronger push? Where would you say we are in terms of the battle ahead?
Yeah, well, I think certain parts of the industry are taking it seriously. I mean, you can see here there's all the obviously M&E consultants and the like that are kind of leading it at the minute. I think there's other parts of the industry, and definitely from us, I haven't seen many contractors lingering around here, not subcontractors, and we're a massive part of that, because ultimately it needs to be done. Like I said, and if the knowledge isn't out there from the contracting side of things, and the understanding that we need a push to drive people into our industry to make sure we've got the labour force to deliver it, I think that would be a massive problem. So I think that there's there needs to be a bit more awareness and a bit broader spectrum of the industry than there currently is, if I'm being honest. I mean, in terms of achieving net zero, or even the gateways through to it, i.e. the B by 2030. I think these are essential to set these targets. But I do think that as an industry we are probably going to struggle to achieve them, if I'm being honest. But that's what we're here to do, and we're going to put all our efforts in and make sure that we're at the forefront of that, helping clients deliver their buildings to net zero going forward. In construction, we always have challenges. I quite often say this on our podcast that if there was ever an industry that gets over challenges, it's the construction industry, because we constantly have them. We've constantly deadlines that we've got to reach, and we are going to be a huge part of this push, and with people like yourselves and with that kind of drive coming from high-level companies, it's where we hopefully will achieve. Listen, it was very nice to meet you, Paul, and best of luck with everything going forward. All right, thank you very much.
This is Constructive Voices.
Hello, Martin Hale from Raw Charging.
Hi Martin. Now, EV charging is going to be a really big story in the next few years, isn't it? As we move towards 2030, when sales of new petrol and diesel cars are banned in the UK. Obviously, a lot of people are already moving towards EVs, and charging is the big question that people have, as well as range. How is your firm helping to address that issue?
Yes, thank you. Basically, these vehicles need to be fueled, and the great opportunity is the fuel is everywhere. So electricity compared to diesel or petrol. And that means empowering various places where these vehicles sit for long periods, or if it's extending the range of the vehicles, doing it quickly at motorway service stations, and that's what we do. We do all of that, and we're agnostic to the solution. We look at what the use case is for all those different locations requires, and then we give 3 different types of ownership option. You can buy it, you can pay monthly, or we'll fully fund it, and then the driver pays per kilowatt hour, and that's how we get our return on funding it.
Now, obviously, everyone's seen charging stations in car parks, for example, and at service stations. I imagine increasingly commercial building tenants, as well as the owners of those buildings, want these charging stations to be there, because as more and more firms move towards electric fleets, they're going to need this, aren't they? And their customers who have electric cars of their own are going to be saying, well, have you got somewhere I can charge my car?
Absolutely, and the use cases are workplace for employees, so that's where large employers want to, or all employers want to help their employees, especially ones that can't charge at home, so that's very important. And yeah, fleets, when all vehicles are electric, fleet charging is going to be absolutely critical, and that's going to be not only at the depot or when the car possibly goes home, but also publicly charging and joining all those 3 up, which is a big requirement, which we can do. And then there's of course publicly charging per se, and residential, of course. So it's all about understanding what the different locations and use cases need, because there are different solutions, and putting the right one in. And the big ask is the power. That's often a showstopper. So where's the power coming from? Is it the building? Is it the grid? And then future readying those first installations to be ready to grade up and put more infrastructure in as it's required.
So do your charging units work whether people are going from the grid or if they're going off grid and they've got their own solution there? It'll work either way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, where the power, we don't mind where the power comes from. If it's renewable, it's amazing, and that's all about storage more than generation, right? So if there's a battery involved, and that doesn't have to be necessarily lithium-ion, it could be through weight or through hydrogen, other ways of storing electricity and then putting it. Fantastic. I mean, as you probably know, there's a lot of renewable generation going on, and it can't all be used, which is tragic. So if we can store it and then put it into things like EV charging, then we are truly off-grid and really contributing to helping climate change and air pollution.
And of course, that's never been more in focus than now with the situation in Ukraine and the disruption to power supplies and the costs of energy going up and up. I mean, you will have seen, I'm sure, growth in the market over the last few years, but I mean, we're looking now presumably at exponential growth over the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, I've been doing this about 15 years, so I've obviously seen a very slow growth, but now it's game over. People are starting to see the benefits of EV electric vehicles. They're enjoying them. There's now much more choice, greater range. It's a truly practical solution now. And the great news is that there is no compromise. It's a much better form of transport, much more enjoyable, much more efficient, absolutely faster. But the one challenge, of course, is the range and refueling. But that's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for landowners, tenants, and everywhere these cars sit for long periods. And that's what we're empowering.
And I mean, these are nice looking, I can't believe I'm saying this, it sounds like a real geeky thing to say, but these are nice looking charging units. You know, I've seen a few in locations around. These look very, very good, but how quick are they? That's the question people want to know, is how quickly can I get juice into my car?
Yeah, and that goes back to there's two ways to do this. You can either use, so the grid is AC, alternating current, and the batteries are DC. So at some point you've got to convert that AC to DC to get into to the batteries. And there's two ways of doing that. Use the car's AC-DC converter, or do it much more quickly outside the vehicle using an AC-DC converter that's bigger, faster. And typically the latter you'll see at motorway service stations for en route solutions. And there you can go up to 350 kilowatts. You literally can charge hundreds of miles in minutes, getting very close to actually putting petrol in. But you actually don't need to do that, because if you're literally empowering the idea that these things can be used the car's charger, trickle charging, while they're parked for long periods, you do it far more efficiently. I mean, best example is people at home. You come home, you plug in, you go to bed, you wake up and somebody's filled your car up for you. And if you buy a decent electricity overnight tariff, then it's at 5p per kilowatt hour. And so to fill my car up, sorry listeners, it's about £5 to get me 300 miles.
Wow, that's fantastic. I know people who have got sort of dishwashers and washing machines set to go on the overnight tariff as well, so they're getting everything at that cheap rate, which is fantastic. So, I mean, for a building owner, obviously, if we have a lot of listeners who are developers, they may be building brand new buildings, but also there's a lot of retrofitting of all kinds of things going on at the moment, and I guess this works in either case.
It does, and in an ideal world, all new buildings would be able to have this ready to go, and I'm sure, and they are. You know, ESG, environmental social governance, is really pushing this along to incentivise new developments and existing conversions. But sadly, conversions are expensive by definition, because the buildings haven't been built for this, and that's the most expensive piece. It's the infrastructure, it's the digging of holes, laying cables, and making good. That's the most expensive piece. But going forward, when we build new and redevelop sites, we can really put this in an early stage, and then it's just the cost of the copper.
Excellent. Martin, where can people find out more?
www.rawcharging.com. It's all there, and I'm very happy to help with either, as I say, selling it, paying monthly, or fully funded.
Constructive Voices.
Live at Footprint Plus.
My name is Mike Harrison. I work for a developer called U&I. I'm the delivery director for a project in Manchester called Mayfield. And we're here today because in August last year, a small SME who had developed a novel product, an additive for concrete, approached us. We were their last resort, really, because they'd been around town. No one would entertain them. But I have an engineering background. I understand concrete. And they came to us with a proposition to reduce the embedded carbon in concrete by 50%. So what I did is I spoke to them, I rinsed them through and through to get comfortable with it, understood the technology, and then with my engineer created a developmental slab that they could then pour, and we could then, because it's important when you're developing a new product that it has to be at reference scale. So it's got 90 cubic meter pour, which is a reasonable pour for a construction site. We use that and their product in a novel way that could then demonstrate to the world the benefits of adding this product, which is called Concretene, into the concrete. And what it does is it gives you a lot greater strength in the concrete for the same cementitious content. So for those technical guys out there, a 35 Newton concrete achieves its strength within 24 hours and then goes up to 70 Newtons after 21 days. So what that means is you're getting 2-3 times the strength that you would have anticipated for the same level of ingredients, and therefore reducing the amount of carbon involved in producing that slab.
How have you found the networking side of things and speaking with like-minded people?
So that's great. I think these sort of events are really important. It's a very kind of workshop type environment. It's easy, it's comfortable, and I think it's important for people when they're out of that work environment to be open to new ideas and to kind of present them, because a lot of the stuff that's being discussed here today is not is work in progress. And so say this product, Concretene, will be ready to buy on the shelves in 2-3 years' time. I've listened to some of the other speakers, and it's about understanding the synergies between what's been done by us as a developer and the supply chain, and then bringing it together to create viable, sustainable projects for people and the UK.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's what the whole drive towards carbon net zero was all about. Like-minded people coming together with different ideas. Your idea, your product sounds absolutely amazing. I'm in construction myself. I know exactly what you're talking about here, and it really does feel like a product that could be the next step that's needed going in the right direction. So what is the next step for the product, and where are we going to see it next?
So at the moment it's in real scale use out on certain specific projects. To get to, it needs certification. That's a process that takes around about 2 years, and through that, in the 2-year period, 2 things will be occurring. There are reference projects where the client's understanding can manage the risk, like our company, and then in parallel, the certification, the BBA certification, will be developed and signed off, and that means it then will go into mass market.
This is Constructive Voices.
And that's all for this episode of Constructive Voices. Please take a moment to share it with others who may find it interesting. Follow or subscribe to get the latest episodes automatically on your favourite podcast app, and rate and review the podcast if you can. You can also listen to the latest episode by saying, "Alexa, play Constructive Voices podcast."
Here's Constructive Voices. Here's the latest episode.
And on our website, where there's lots more information too. That's constructive-voices.com. Don't forget the dash. Until next time, thanks for listening. You're really helping us build something.